Saw you walking in just now.
Yes, I didn't realize we were in this room.
Yeah.
May I have another copy? I walked off.
Of course, yeah. There you go.
Another one's I did.
I'm not on all cylinders.
Oh, okay. So you didn't send your papers in for removal,
Oh,
did you?
no, I didn't.
Oh, next year. Next year. Rather yellows.
Good. Okay. Oh, no, I was right.
They need you though. There's nothing on Kabbalah.
There's nothing?
None of these things.
Oh, we couldn't still put something in now?
Well, I think you should check with them.
Are you still involved? You're still,
Well, not so much.
Okay.
But, she'll give you a pass. But I'll get your papers in.
I'd love to teach there, just, you know.
So interested?
It's just tricky. Sometimes a funeral comes up and they don't seem, you know, but I'm happy.
Well,
Love to.
that happens to us. Sometimes they cancel that day if they,
Oh, okay.
Because it's all rabbis. So,
I'm happy to teach, yeah.
well, I don't know who you contacted. Was it
Yeah,
Leslie?
let's talk after. Let's
Okay.
talk after. Welcome. So we're right in the middle of our discussion about the Beinoni, about the different qualities of the Beinoni. If you remember in chapter 9, we looked at the battle between the souls, where that happens, and how the two souls function. Chapter 10, we looked at the definition of the Rasha, the Tzaddik, and chapter 11, we looked at the definition of the Rasha, that they all have different levels. And finally, in chapter 12, we looked at the definition of the Beinoni, right? And what's our go-to definition of a Beinoni? A Beinoni is someone who
Looks like a
Never does a sin. Never did a sin. Doesn't do a sin. Won't do a sin.
Okay, don't get
But
the
he
complicated
thinks
thing.
about
Just simple.
Looks
Just
like a
simple.
tzaddik on the outside, but not on the inside.
Looks like it's tzaddik on the outside, but on the inside. So what is outside? Outside means what? Let's use terminology.
Garments.
Garments, right? The garments are
Thought, speech, and action.
right. So the garments, thought, speech, and action are like a tzaddik. And what's like a Rasha?
The heart.
Heart. Okay. Well, let's be technical. What are we calling it?
the attributes.
The attributes,
brain.
right? Which are what?
The brain versus the...
No, not the brain. The brain's an organ. The attributes are something else, right? The attributes, the brain is what the attributes use to think, but the attributes, chokhmah, bin, and dat, are not the brain, right? The brain's where physical thought happens. The attributes, emotions, the intellect of the soul, chokhmah, bin, and dat, chesed, gvur, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, malchut, right?
That's why we didn't say it.
Yeah, so we don't have to remember all those names necessarily, but the outside, or the garments, is thought, speech, and action, is like a tzaddik. The inside, the identity of the soul, or the attributes, so-called the intellect and emotions of the soul, not the brain and the heart, but the actual attributes, that is still like a Rasha.
Like a Russia.
And so that's our definition of the Beinoni, right? But sometimes during prayer, they can have a moment like a tzaddik, where now those attributes that are like a Rasha, they go dormant. Right? And how do they do it? They do it by hamoach shalit halev. The mind controls the heart. We've learned that. And that's good. So let's always keep that in mind. Now we start at chapter 13. In chapter 13, the Alter Rebbe starts answering some of our questions. We've been waiting patiently. Right, so first he looks at this question of how we're judged by both our good and evil inclinations. Right? In the opening chapters he said, a tzaddik is judged by their good inclination, a Rasha is judged by their evil inclination, a Beinoni is judged by both. And then he kind of left it there. But it wasn't rhetorical. We're going to look at now what he means. He says, judge does not mean dictated or determined. It doesn't mean ruled. So my evil inclination may make a judgment, but it's like one of a panel of judges that's giving an opinion. That's all. So if I'm here, I'm in court, I don't know if I'm guilty or innocent, and suddenly one judge gives their decision, their opinion, it's on the table. What's happening to me? Do I know? I don't know yet. There's two more judges, right? So that opinion may be irrelevant in terms of the outcome. I know it's there now. I see that opinion, but it's just an opinion. It does not determine whether I am guilty or innocent at that moment. So there's a break. There's a break between our inclination and our behavior. if you can picture yourself sitting in a court, when that judge puts that opinion on the table, uh-oh, that doesn't look good, but I don't know what's going to happen yet. There's still a break. There's 2 more judges to come, and I'm not going to jail. I'm not free yet. There's a break. I'm just waiting. We want to notice that that's what's happening psychologically, right? We're creating a new framework for us to actually modify our behavior, right? So, and we'll get to that in a moment. So first, we're understanding that when the evil inclination gives its opinion, yes, I should say this or do this or think this, it's just an opinion. That's all it is. Then the good inclination gives its opinion. That also is just an opinion. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a good person. So I have a quiet voice. I have a conscience. It says, maybe that's not a good idea. Okay, well, that's a good sign, right? That I noticed that. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a good person. It also is just an opinion. And then we learned there's a third judge that comes, and if both opinions are put on the table, and the evil inclination, like a good Bainani evil inclination, is arguing to do the absolutely most self-centered thing possible and why that's a great idea, because that's what a Bainani is. Their evil inclination is right there doing their thing. And now the good inclination has come and said, you know what? Trying to think about other people around you, improve yourself, be a better person, maybe don't go down this path again. If we put them both on the table, now we're at a stalemate, in fact. And the reason why the mind controls the heart is because there's a third judge. And if both judgments are on the table, the third judge is actually the Ein Sof. And the Ein Sof will always go with their guy, right? The Ein Sof gave us a divine soul and is going to help us and make sure that it'll tip the scale in favor of the divine soul. And that's that light from Chokhmah of Atzilus, call it, if you take in our Kabbalah class, that light from the Ein Sof that's flooding through the divine soul, through the Chokhmah of the divine soul, that is actually the third judge. That's God's presence in my life, that if I do my best, I make sure that the animal soul and the divine soul both get their opinions heard. Now the light in the divine soul will always win, with the advantage that light has over darkness. And so if you look at what we've done, we've actually created a gap by remodeling a few things. First, we've redefined what behavior is, which is important, because growing up in North America, you may not think that what you think is your behavior. I may feel like the mind just goes on, and there's patterns of this, and if I see something, I have to think about it, and if my family thought about it, I have to think about it, and I've thought about it yesterday, I have to think about it today, and it's just my identity. I don't have control. The Alter Rebbe says, no, that's behavior. Behavior includes all thought, all speech, all action, all conscious, volitional thought, speech, and action, and that's all behavior. Right? So like all behavior, I have control over it. So we've redefined behavior. Then we've created a gap before that behavior happens, which many people just jump over. Right? Oh, you know, I had this feeling, I just had to say it, right? I had this feeling, I just had to have this fantasy in my mind. There's a gap. Right? That feeling that drives that behavior, seemingly, is just an opinion that's on the table. That's all it is. And I can sit back as long as I want and say, okay, I've got this opinion from my Yetzer Hara. Doesn't mean that has to translate into behavior. So I've created a gap where the intellect can come in and create a pause and say, okay, fine, no surprise. Yetzer Hara has said I should yell this, do this, say this. Let me see what the divine soul says, right? Let me get a second opinion on the table, like something important, right? An important medical decision, an important legal decision. Here, this is an important way I'm going to let my soul express in life. It's just as important. Let me get a second opinion. I'm going to wait before I think, speak, or act. I'm going to get a second opinion, put them both on the table. So A, we've redefined behavior to include things that we may have thought were automatic. And then B, we've created a gap where I can now say, doesn't mean I have to do every urge that I have. I can have some discretion. Let me get a second opinion on the table. And now I have some space where I can assess whether my instincts are guiding my behavior properly. And then C, I've created a moral compass.
Doesn't this whole process proceed at lightning speed?
Well, that's the problem. It can. So we've been raised to think, have a feeling, say the thing, right? Did I even think about it? Maybe, right? So it can proceed at lightning speed, and if it does, I'm probably going to trip up and fail. That's why we're going through real slow, and you have to establish a new pattern where perhaps I do exercises like waiting 5 seconds before I answer anybody, right? So it takes some work to open up that moment so that I see the steps, but the steps are there. Even if it happens at lightning speed, I'm not aware of it. I did have a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Tov could have given a new opinion. It did go through thought, emotion and thought, and then I did actually choose to do it. I may not notice that'll happen at lightning speed, but I did make a choice. So if we stretch each step out, now we establish our free will more consciously, more mindfully. Right? So the third step, first step is redefine behavior. Second step is establish this space, this gap where I can have both opinions on the table, both souls. And third is there's a moral compass where I'm not alone in this decision. And ultimately, the book that we're in has a happy ending, and it has a moral. And so if I leave room for the Ein Sof to be the third judge, it's always going to help me tip to the side of a proper, other-centered, altruistic decision. Right? That's always going to work. Right? Because the book has a happy ending, it has a moral. If we want, we can decide collectively to add a few pages onto that book and make it get to that happy ending later. But we're going to get to that happy ending, and the book has a moral compass.
How do I know that the third judge has had an opportunity to review it and to decide?
Well, ultimately, if I did the right thing, that means that I let that light in. If I did the wrong thing, it means I didn't leave time for that. Yeah? Because ultimately, when I look honestly at a proper, altruistic, helpful thing to do, and I look properly at a self-centered, destructive thing to do, I'm never really going to honestly pick the destructive thing with my truest self, right? So if I'm still doing that destructive behavior, it means guess who's running the show? It's still Nefesh B'Amit. It may have fooled me to make it look like Nefesh B'Amit was Nefesh Elokit. That can happen, because Nefesh B'Amit may rationalize things. But ultimately, that's the model that we're looking at. If I'm doing the correct thing, it means that I'm flowing with the light of the Ein Sof. If I look back and I say, oi, oh my God, I could have done better, then I didn't leave enough time. I need to work harder. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much.
And then finally, he looks at a second piece. He'll answer three big questions this chapter. This is the second. So what was this deal with, should I see myself as a Rasha or a Tzaddik or something else, right? The very first chapter opens up, we take this oath, think of yourself, try to be a Tzaddik, try to be a Tzaddik, but even if the whole world says you are, think of yourself Rasha. Think of yourself as a Rasha.
Well, like a Russian, not as a Russian.
As like synonyms, right? If you like, either way. Right? And so he's left that question open. He didn't make any sense. He said, you'll be depressed, or you'll be, what's the word he uses, flippant about the mitzvahs. He didn't resolve it. Now he finally says, no. The thing is, don't think of yourself as a Rasha, think of yourself as a Rasha. Right? So by flipping the focus on that word, that's a typical Hasidic take of taking one letter that we didn't notice and saying, turn it upside down. It's not that we actually are a Rasha, it's just that we're like a Rasha. That's how you answer it. So like a Rasha, my attributes will always be self-centered, right? And I'll always have that Nefesh B'Amit, and its attributes will always be self-centered. But I'm just like a Rasha in that my behavior doesn't have to follow that. I can behave just like a tzaddik, even though I have the attributes of a Rasha. So that's how you answer that question. Don't think of yourself as an actual Rasha, God forbid. If you haven't thought, said, or done anything that you recognize as being sinful, you may be just like a Rasha. You may be a Beinoni. But don't think of yourself as a tzaddik. Don't think that you've uprooted the Nefesh B'Amit, because in that case, you'll let your guard down and you could actually wind up way lower than you started. Everybody feels caught up? You with us?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're on page 196. Near the bottom, Ele sheyachazik atzmo levenoni. I want to go.
Rather, one should consider himself a Beinoni.
Right, so this is the take home. That oath to consider yourself kirasha, like a Rasha, means try to be a tzaddik, but think of yourself as an actual Beinoni. A Beinoni of the Tanya, not a Beinoni as was defined sort of loosely in the Talmud. ולא להאמין לעולם שאומרים שהרע שבו נתבטל לגבי הטוב, שזו מדרגה צדיק.
And should not believe except the world's opinion, which would have him believe that the evil in him has been nullified by the good, for this is the level
So the world may say, right, as Rabba's students said, you know, this is the biggest tzaddik of the generation. This is a tzaddik we're learning from. You're a tzaddik. You're a tzaddik. You're a tzaddik. Right? You look, it was obvious to them that he was a tzaddik, and he was. But still, even if the whole world says you're a tzaddik, you should think of yourself as kirasha, right? That you should not consider yourself to be on the level of the tzaddik. Right? Because only the tzaddik, let's look at this, only the tzaddik.
Only the tzaddik succeeds in nullifying and transforming the evil within him. But the world, which judges the deity by his actions and sees that he never transgresses, assumes that he too has effectively banished from within him the evil that is the cause of sin. Consequently, people regard him as a tzaddik. He is therefore cautioned against accepting the opinion of the world.
So only a tzaddik has totally transformed the Yetzer Hara. Right? So I can have thought, speech, and action just like a tzaddik my whole life long, and everyone around me may think, oh, this is a tzaddik, but only a tzaddik has really on the inside transformed the identity of the soul completely. אלא יהיה בעיניו כאילו מהותו ועצמתו של הרע הוא בתקפו ובגבורתו בחלל השמאלי כתולדתו.
Instead, he should take the view that the essence and core of the evil is in its full native strength and light in the left strength and light in the left part of his heart.
Right, so not just that it's still there, but that it's still there like when I was a 5-year-old. Right? It's still there like when I was a 5-year-old. I think I'm so mature. I think I've done all these classes in meditation and learned all this Torah and had kids and grown up. But my Yetzer Hara, basically, its attributes are the same as when I was that 5-year-old screaming for ice cream because I didn't like this flavor, right? I'm that immature inside. So not just that it's still there, but really it could be as strong as at its full strength.
Do we ever accept the opinion of the world?
No. Why would we? No. No.
Because everybody thinks that I'm this or that. Do they not have the ability to judge me properly?
They may, but it doesn't matter from my perspective because I can fool myself and I can fool them. They have no way of knowing truly. I mean, the answer to your question is no, right? I mean, ultimately, the world can't be completely sure that someone is a tzaddik, that they don't have some little bit of leftover. So ultimately, I know people kind of come to a consensus that certain people are tzaddikim, but you really never know in the end. Even the world has no true way. I can't see your midot, right? I can't see whether they're just dormant or whether they're transformed. So.
But does it really matter?
It doesn't matter for our conversation. No one would look at anyone in this room and say, "Oh, that's a tzaddik," right? And not by this definition, right? So we're talking academic here. But certainly for myself, the advantage of not ever listening to the world saying, for instance, this person's a tzaddik, is that I want to keep working on myself and assuming that there's something to transform. Otherwise, I may stop. So that's the advantage. So no, you never. That oath applies my whole life. Not having, we did velo halaf v'halaf mimenu meuma.
No.
Velo halaf v'halach mimenu meuma.
Not having vanished or departed from him at all.
So it's not left at all. ודרבה, נתחזק יותר בהמשך הזמן שנשתמש בו הרבה.
On the contrary, with the passage of time, the evil has gained strength because he utilized it to the animal soul considerably.
באכילה ושתייה ושאר ענייני עולם הזה.
In eating and drinking and another mundane pursuit.
I got a chuckle over here, right?
That's okay.
So the divine soul cannot eat. The divine soul cannot drink. The divine soul cannot think physical thoughts. The divine soul cannot feel physical emotions. The divine soul certainly cannot go and shovel the walkway, right?
Right, it wouldn't have a physical body if there was only a divine soul.
Say that again?
The physical body could not exist if we only had the divine soul. The animal soul
Okay,
is what
okay.
forces
I
us to eat and
mean,
drink.
yeah. Let's not get into the esoterics of that debate. But the divine soul can't do anything. physical, right? The divine soul is enclosed in the animal soul, and the only way the divine soul can interact with the physical brain or the physical heart or the physical body or the physical tongue is by being clothed in the animal soul, and then the animal soul moves the body, right? So I'm not even riding the horse. I'm just like, I'm piggybacking on the driver of the horse, and I'm saying, go this way, if you know what I mean. My divine soul is like holding on, it's enclosed in the animal soul. It's like, okay, eat that, okay, say this, okay, think this. Otherwise, the divine soul is it's about godliness.
Well, how does it survive?
It doesn't need to survive, it's alive, right? The divine soul is eternal life.
Well, doesn't anything that's alive need to be sustained?
Right, so it has to survive in the world by enclothing itself in the animal soul and saying, yeah, have breakfast, good. How do you have breakfast? This way, not this way, right? Yeah, go ahead and have this conversation, but have it this way, not this way. But the divine soul does not directly do anything in the physical body. It's always enclosed in the animal soul. So that's why the divine soul can't ignore all the stuff the animal soul is throwing up, because it has to actually work with it. It's like it's in a suit to use this spaceship of the body, right? So that's why even when the divine soul has been eating what I'm going to call kosher for me, and having conversations that I'm going to call altruistic for me, and observing all the mitzvot the way that I want to here at Temple Israel, it's still the animal soul that's been physically doing it, right? The animal soul that actually ate the chicken soup, the animal soul that enjoyed the conversation, whatever it is. So even though the divine soul is doing things 100% properly and is directing the animal soul to follow its compass bearing, the animal soul is still enjoying the chicken soup, right? And its sense of pleasure is still getting strengthened more and more, even as I'm doing productive things, right? So whereas a tzaddik has managed to actually transform that, even a Beinoni that spends their whole life doing thought, speech, and action according to the divine soul, that's been done through the animal soul, and the animal soul has been like, yeah, chicken soup, of course, right? And it just gets stronger and stronger. And the divine soul has to keep being more and more firm to make sure, okay, so a question, I got eyebrows, so let's start with a question.
Well, I was just wondering, prayers, like when you say,
Yeah.
pray to God, is that which soul is that when you're talking about the true?
Right, so that's the best example where how could it be anything but the divine soul, right? If I'm praying, that must be the divine soul creating it. But I'm a cantor with a beautiful voice, and I love my high notes, and here I am, a guest cantor, New Synagogue, and I want to make sure they hear my high C's and how devout I am, and they're impressed, and I widen my reputation as a cantor who loves God and loves praying. Let them see how, right? Suddenly I've taken, using me as an example, perhaps I've taken prayer, and now the animal soul has come in and basically said, well, you think you're doing it your way, we're doing it my way, right? On top of that, even if I'm doing it correctly, look, there's a joy in singing and in praying, connecting with God and the animal soul. And that's complicated. I use that idea. I think prayer, the animal soul is less prone to being strengthened by, but it still can take it over. There's nothing the animal soul can't jump in and hijack for its own purposes. Yeah? What was you had eyebrows.
Oh, the animal soul is so dominant.
Yeah?
It's almost like you've got no chance.
Right. That's why. But luckily, the mind controls the heart, and light has an advantage over darkness. Right. So even though I may be wandering around in this dark cave for days and days and days, the moment I light a candle, oh, now I see my way out. Right. So when you're in it, you feel like it's so dominant it has no chance. But it's really, the advantage light has over darkness. It's immediate. It's like the troll that turns to stone in the sun. Right? It's like that old story. So this troll that hunts at night and is so invincible, the moment it stays out a moment too late and some light gets in, boom. Now it's frozen, there's no life in it at all. So it feels when we're in it like it's so dominant, but once we start asserting the divine soul, we realize, the whole thing was just a sort of a puffed up balloon, or it could just turn to stone in a moment.
The divine soul is controlled by the brain.
No, the divine soul is most at home in the brain, but the brain is a tool of the divine soul. Yeah, the brain doesn't control anything in this. The divine soul has its own intellect, and the animal soul has its intellect, and they're both trying to use the brain.
And how about the animal soul? Is that controlled by anything?
the animal soul has will, it's a being, and the divine soul has will. It's like, imagine I'm on the Hubble telescope, right? And astronomers all want to have time on the Hubble telescope, or there's a new one now, because they want to look, they want to do things, but only one astronomer can log in and use the Hubble telescope at a time, right? So either this guy's using it or this guy's using it, and they, you know, when this guy's time is up, this guy comes in. The Hubble telescope, that's the brain. The two astronomers, those are the two souls, and this one may be doing research that he's trying to, you know, destroy the planet. This one may be doing research to save the planet. But when this one's on, this one can't do anything, right? So I have two souls trying to use my physical brain, and when my animal soul is using my brain, its will is actually dictating my thoughts. And same with the divine soul. But the souls, those are the seat of will. Those are the identity, and those are the ones who are deciding. It's complicated because I said I have will, that's the intellectual soul that we discussed briefly, right? So let's not get too complicated. Yeah, when I'm praying, generally my divine soul is the me that's praying. When I'm yelling at someone, that's my animal soul that's yelling. But it gets complicated in life, so you want to be subtle. Okay. So the take home here is, don't think the animal soul is weaker simply because I've been doing more and more good stuff. Even a Bainani that's been doing good stuff their whole life, the attributes of the animal soul are not even, as I said, as strong as a 5-year-old, they're even stronger. Because for 50 years I've been eating and drinking good things, but the animal soul has been enjoying it, and it's been strengthening its sense of desire and will, and its love for chicken soup, and its fear of whatever it fears.
What can it hurt?
What's that?
It's kind of like, oh, what can it hurt if I do this?
Yeah, that one, yeah. So as with every faculty, so who's reading?
I think right.
Let's go on with the.
My turn? Oh, as with every faculty, constant use of the animal soul causes it to become even stronger than it was at birth. Keep going.
Yeah.
The Alter Rebbe thus concludes that the words "consider yourself like a Rasha" mean that one must consider himself a Baini. The above applies even to those who have reached a lofty spiritual level. They too should consider themselves Beinonim. For should one consider himself a tzaddik and maintain that the evil within him has already been nullified by the good, he will cease to do battle with the evil. If he is mistaken and is not in fact a tzaddik, such an unfounded attitude can cause him to slip drastically from his level, descending even lower than the level of a Beinani to that of a Rasha.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that we've answered this question. For our purposes, where we're trying to get closer to the level of Bainani, this is more academic, but good to understand the structure of the soul, the definitions of the Bainani. And now we're going to go through a little more quickly the next section of this chapter, because here he's talking about different levels of a Bainani. Just like the Rasha and Tzaddik had different levels, so does the Bainani have different levels. He doesn't define them so distinctly. He doesn't give them names, for instance, the way he did with it's actually the Gemara that gave them names. But he does describe different levels. This next one is a Bainani. Until now we've been describing a Bainani that lives a normal life and maybe gets up in the morning and does some prayer and learns a bit of Torah and then has to go and work and is in the world and sees all kind of things and has all kind of temptations, comes home, does the evening prayers, and life is a struggle, but they always manage to think, say, and do the right thing despite being out in the world and living a normal life. A second level of Bainani, and there's even more, people make it complex, but a second level is someone that really, say they're at HUC and learning Torah all day, right? Some of the Hebrew Union College, the students, they're now dedicating their lives to becoming better Jews, to learning more. They're not really out in the world in the same way. And so how does that change things that I'm not out seeing kind of worldly temptations, let's call them? And then a third level is one where the advantage of what happens in a Bainani during prayer is extended the whole day, like a Bainani who prays all day, which is an even higher level. And that higher level will explain finally why Rabbah made this error in saying, for instance, I'm a Bainani. How he could have thought that he could have been the example of a Bainani when he was the greatest tzaddik of his time. Right, so again, this is more academic. We're going to go a little faster. until now, go ahead.
Until now, we've been speaking of a working man who does not have the opportunity to spend all his time in Torah study and divine service. Now the discussion turns to the individual who spends all his time immersed in the study of Torah.
So what about this Beinoni, who just learns Torah all day? Maybe they're tzaddik. Are they? What's happening with them? Do they still have the same urges? Is their Yetzer Hara just as strong? Let's see.
What would a Reformed Jew spend his time on all day if he wanted to devote himself to praying all day?
Well, I think the rabbinic students at HUC learn Torah. They learn responsa. They learn Gemara. They learn Midrash. Jewish law. I mean, there's endless stuff to learn. So, I mean, we learn the same texts in addition to some more progressive stuff and responsive from the Reformed community. But, there's no end of what to learn.
Yesterday I had a class of Federation, 9 to 12, 1 to 2:30, and 7 to 8:30.
You got to say it. You're a good example. You do spend a lot of your day.
That's the one day.
Yeah.
But how about the Orthodox people? That's what they do all the time.
Well, I mean, there are Orthodox people that work, and they really have to get up early and fit in some prayer and some. I got a friend who he's so brilliant. He has a late night Megillah reading where he reads Megillah Esther, boom, back to front, so beautifully, and he can chant, I think, any section of Torah, and is a brilliant guy. But he works in the car industry, and he gets it all done in the morning, and then he goes and he's an engineer at work, right? And then he comes home, and then he does more. So
I'm getting worried about you. You're getting.
That's not every day. That's not every day.
And don't call her tzaddik, because then she's going to have more work to do.
But today I'm here, so I mean, Reformed Jews, I think, have opportunities to study.
Yeah, of course. We have a big library here and lots to learn. V'af mi did I read this?
No.
V'af mi b'torat Hashem chefzo v'yehege va yomam v'layla lishmo.
Even if one's entire aspiration is in God's Torah, which he studies day and night for its own sake.
Day and night. So, all day, and then I get a little nap from 9 p.m. till midnight, and then I get up and I learn all night, like a serious person, that this is their life's ambition. This
This is still no proof whatsoever that the evil has been dislodged from its place.
Right, so no. Doesn't matter. You see somebody that's just learning in that style, just all day and all night, and they just go in and they chop some food, and then they go back and they learn some more, and they chop some sleep, and they go back. Doesn't matter. That evil, it could still be there in full strength. Right? אלא יכול להיות שמהותו ועצמותו הוא בתקפו וגבורתו במקומו בחלל השמאלי. Perhaps. It's me. Perhaps, rather, the essence and substance of the evil are in their full strength and might in its abode in the left part of the heart. רק שלבושיו שהם מחשבה, דיבור, מעשה של נפש הבהמית אינם מתלבשים במוח והפה והידיים ושאר איברי הגוף.
Except that its garments, namely the thought, speech, and action of the animal's soul, are not invested in the brain, mouth, and hands, and other parts of the body to think and do that which is forbidden.
Why? מפני השם שנתן שליטה וממשלה למוח על הלב.
Because God had granted the mind supremacy and dominion over the heart.
So, just because I'm constantly thinking, saying, and doing Torah-centered, godly-centered, altruistic activity, doesn't mean that my attributes in the left side of my heart have changed. It could just be the mind is controlling my heart all the time, and it's just not getting to the brain. It's never getting to the brain. But the fact that my brain is focusing on the highest knowledge I possibly can all the time does not mean that judge is not constantly saying, we should be going out and enjoying ourselves, we should be, going to see a movie, we should be whatever, right? That judge is still there giving its opinions day and night, even as the thoughts in the brain are being guided by the divine soul, right? It does not prove anything. ולכן נפש אלוקית שבמוח מושלת בעיר הקטנה, איברי הגוף כולם. Therefore,
Therefore, the divine soul in the mind rules over the small city, over all the
Shiu levush umerkava.
Making them, the body's organs, serve as garment and vehicle,
Right, as a means.
as means of an expression, garment that is totally subservient to its user, as is a vehicle to its rider. Thus, because of its God-given supremacy, the divine soul is able to use the body's organ as a garment and vehicle.
Right, so just because the divine soul has turned thought, speech, and action into the level even of a merkava, right, of a vehicle that just, I turn the steering wheel right, it goes right, it has no will, doesn't mean that in the attributes in the left side of the heart that that's been weakened in any way, right? I've just strengthened divine soul to the point where now the divine soul will always assert itself. It will always ask for the third judge's opinion, and it's always going to determine what's thought, what's spoken, what's said. But that has no bearing on how aggressively my attributes of my animal soul are still in there fighting for their cause. I'm just, every decision that the animal soul suggests, the divine soul suggests the opposite, every time. And you have to get more and more mindful. You have to look at subtle behaviors and subtle thought patterns, and also, with those, insist that the divine soul also come and give an opinion, right? But even though I've done it, doesn't mean that I've changed the animal soul. I still am Russia.
When would you change the animal soul? How can you ever change the animal soul?
Right. So we talked about that. You do it to some extent by the mind controlling the heart.
Right.
And you do it also to some extent with the short long path, which we'll
Right.
get to. So you do gradually establish patterns, but overall, in terms of is it there and how strong it is, the animal soul we want to assume is still at its full strength because it's still enjoying life, right? So you're not going to get a clear answer on that. Like, it kind of depends on the conversation. לשלושת לבושיה שהתלבשו בהם שהם מחשבה, דיבור, מעשה של תרי"ג מצוות התורה.
Through which its three garments, namely the thought, speech, and action of the Torah's 613 commandments, are expressed clothed.
It may be.
Okay, it may be then that with regard to this individual's thinking and speaking words of Torah and performing the mitzvot, the divine soul rules over the body. In this area, the divine soul has the upper hand and the animal soul is subservient.
So when it comes to the body, thought, speech, and action, the divine soul has the upper hand because the mind is ruling the heart, but it doesn't mean that the heart has been transformed. אבל מהותה ועצמותה של נפש אלוקית אין לה שליטה וממשלה על מהותה ועצמותה של נפש הבהמית בבינוני.
However, in its essence and substance, the divine soul has no preponderance over the essence and substance of the animal soul in the case of the Bani.
So that's really good to recognize. In this space I've created, and in my definition of behavior, I need to understand I have total free will over my behavior, thought, speech, and action, but I may have no impact whatsoever on this so-called judge of the animal soul, on my Yetzer Hara, and I just assume it's going to be there, giving me its compass bearing all the time. And it's good to have that in mind because then I'm not going to let up. I'm going to keep trying to improve myself. I'm going to keep doing work. I'm not going to get to a state where, okay, I've established a pattern and now I can just rely on that. That's my new automatic, and I'm good. Because trust me, the moment you go back in automatic, the animal soul's like, okay, now it's time to play, right? So you have to be constantly mindful. You have to be constantly alive and alert. And you have to be constantly growing. That's why we say, when it comes to holiness and self-improvement, you're either going forward or you're going backwards. There actually is no static reality. Right? If you think you're static, if you think you've hit a level and now I'm just going to stay at this level for the past month, you've been sliding backwards for the past month. Because that really doesn't exist. Psychologically, either I'm pushing myself to go past what I think is my comfortable zone and now I'm growing perhaps, or I'm letting myself slide backwards and there isn't a pause, there isn't a still. Same thing with this. I never want to assume that I've transformed the animal soul and now I'm safe, I'm good, I'm a mature person. I always want to assume I do have this this being within me that is going to keep trying to get me to backslide, get me to be self-centered. כי אם בשעה שאהבת השם הוא בהתגלות ליבו.
Except at those times when his love for God manifests itself in his heart.
ביתי מזומנים כמו בשעת התפילה וכיוצא בו.
On propitious occasions such as during prayer and the like.
Then,
As mentioned in the previous chapter, the Benoni is aroused to a burning love of God that causes the evil in the animal soul to be nullified before the goodness of the divine soul.
so as we learn during prayer, there is a temporary shift or reprieve where now the divine soul's attributes can create a love that's so intense that actually nullifies temporarily the attributes of the animal soul, and they're dormant, so to speak. So yes, but even then, v'af gam zot hapam,
Even then, during those times when the divine soul gains the upper hand over the animal soul,
eina rak shlita u'memshala levad.
It is limited to predominance and dominion alone. The divine soul succeeds in dominating the animal soul, not in vanquishing it in the sense of nullifying its essence.
Right, so I'm wrestling with this other guy, and I've pinned him down, and I've got him in a good position. I can hold him there as long as I want, but this guy's still trying to get up, and the moment I stand up, we're going to be back at it again, right? So that's the difference between that versus I've sat him down, I've taught him what I think is important, I've changed his mind, and I've made him my greatest ally, and now I can let him go and help me. Right, so when we're praying, the divine soul is just sat on the animal soul effectively enough that the animal soul is just, okay, fine, I'm going to wait this out, right? But the moment the divine soul stops, now the animal soul is back at it again. It's just dormant in that case. What time are we at? I want 5 minutes before we get to the end.
we got 10 minutes yet.
10 to.
Okay, good. Yeah?
No, go ahead. I'll save it.
כדכתיב לא מרום יאמץ. As is written, of the battle between Jacob and Esau. And remember, we looked at Jacob and Esau as being the model of the two souls. Allegorically representing the war between good and evil in man's soul, and one nation shall prevail over the other, right? Jacob, exemplifying the good, merely prevails over Esau, the evil, but does not succeed in totally vanquishing him. So that quote, we said one nation will prevail over the other, but we didn't say one nation will conquer the other, say. It's just having a temporary dominance, where now it seems the other one is dormant. כשזה קם זה נופל וכשזה קם חולו.
This agrees with our sage's comment on this verse. When this one rises and prevails, that one falls. And when that one rises, this one falls. The animal soul, although it has fallen during prayer, is afterward able to rise and rally once again, indicating that the divine soul had not succeeded in vanquishing it even during prayer, for which reason even its dominance is only temporary.
So even again, we're looking specifically at the language, and he's saying, in the same way he says the soul is judged, not ruled, judged, he's saying that when one nation rises, it prevails over the other, doesn't conquer the other, in the case of a Benoni.
They're distinguishing between prayer and study. Is that right?
Yeah, we've used both. We talked about someone that studies all day, and that's primarily this one. But he's brought in the dynamic of even when you're praying, that's just temporary. So, although we say he's creating definitions of the Benoni, in the Tanya he wasn't so clear as saying, this Benoni is called this Benoni is called this. He's not really, he's implying it, but he's not really clarifying it. So that's why he kind of mixes it up.
Okay, he does.
The animal soul, although, do we do that? Yeah. שנפש אלוקית מתאמצת ומתגברת על נפש הבהמית במקור הגבורות שהיא בינה.
Thus, the divine soul gains strength and ascendancy over the animal soul and the source of strength of the world, which is understanding.
Let's not do let's stop it there. And this is, so just let's not do the editorial, but this is for people that have done the Kabbalah. If you want to have the strength to limit the animal soul, you have to use the Gevura of the divine soul, and the source of the Gevura is always Bina. If you looked at the tree of life, right? Chesed flows from Chochmah, and Gvura flows from Bina. So if you want to strengthen your sense of Gvura, the divine soul, you have to go to its root, which is Bina, and that's why meditation in Judaism is always on the Bina side. We're always looking at the actual intellectual comprehension of some godly concept, not just the flash of inspiration, the sort of empty-minded awareness. We actually focus on contemplating the details and the various intellectual qualities of a divine concept, because the more I understand about godliness on that side, the more I strengthen now the Gevurah of the divine soul to actually control my behavior in thought, speech, and action. And so he gets a little into the Kabbalah there, but that's not our main focus. להתבונן בגדולת השם אין סוף ברוך הוא ולהוליד אהבה עזה לשם כרשפי אש בחלל הימני שבליבו.
Thus, when the divine soul gains strength over the animal soul during prayer, pondering on the greatness of God, the blessed Ein Sof, and thereby giving birth to intense and flaming love of God in the right part of his heart.
So we know about this practice of Beinoni now, where during prayer especially, this love like a flaming fire is created in the right side of the heart. ואז יתקפיה סטרה אחרא שבחלל השמאלי. And then?
Thus, when the divine soul
next.
Yeah.
gains strength
Oh.
over
No,
Just a minute.
no.
One
And-
more down.
And
Yeah.
then,
And then,
here. And then, when the divine soul dominates the animal soul with its intense and revealed love of God, the Sitra Ahara, the evil of the animal soul in the left part of the heart, is subjugated.
So we learn these two terms, iskafia and ishafka, and here we're dealing with just, it's being stopped, right? It's being arrested, it's being dominated, it's not being transformed. It's ishafka is not actually being converted to the other side. אבל לא נתבטל לגמרי בבינוני אלא בצדיק שנאמר בו וליבי חלל בקרבי.
But it is not entirely abolished. In the case of the Benoni, it is so only in the tzaddik, concerning whom it is said, my heart is void within me. The abode in the heart, usually occupied by the evil inclination, is void in the heart of the tzaddik.
And it's very interesting right now to go through chapter 1 again and find all these questions and quotes he brought up and think, wow, he really laid the groundwork for this conversation. Now he's resolving a lot of these, because that was from chapter 1 when he's talking about the way each type of person is judged, tzaddik and rasha and Beinoni. He said tzaddik is really determined by this quality that their heart is void within them. Now we understand what that means. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking, doing, or saying all the right things. It means that nullification of the attributes of the animal soul, it's so complete that there's basically nothing there. When I think about what would self-centered Michael do in this situation, there's no answer, there's no urge, there's no nothing, right? For a tzaddik, there's absolutely no inclination left. I don't know what that feels like. והוא מאס ברע ושונאו בתכלית השנאה והמיאוס, או שלא בתכלית השנאה כנזכר לעיל.
He, the tzaddik, despises and loathes evil with a consummate hatred if he is a complete tzaddik, or without quite such utter hatred if he is an incomplete tzaddik, as explained in chapter 10.
So remember in chapter 10 he talked about the tzaddik being defined not just by doing or saying or thinking the right thing, but by absolutely abhorring the wrong thing so much that it'd be like me eating a bowl of throw up, of vomit. Like, good. Not that I'm not even going to do it. I'm horrified by it. I would cross the street. I want it out of the room, right? A tzaddik loves the Ein Sof so much that they despise its opposite, and for them, any self-centered activity at all, they're actually horrified by it.
Matthew, you said you wanted 5 minutes?
Yeah. Well, we can do these paragraphs, and then we'll get. אבל בבינוני הוא דרך משל כאדם כשישן, שיכול לחזור ולאור משנתו.
All the above applies to the tzaddik, but in a Beinoni, the evil merely lies dormant, as with a sleeping man, for example, who can awaken from his sleep at any time and reactivate his faculties.
So we should consider that. If I'm not hearing from my nefesh b'amit, it's because it's taking a nap. And what happens when someone's taking a nap? They can always wake up, right? Kach hara b'beinoni hu ki yashen bechalal hasmoli.
So is the evil in the Beni dormant, as it were, in the left part of the heart, not functioning at all, not even desiring physical pleasures.
Bishat kriyat shema tefillah shelibo bo'ed be'avat Hashem.
During the recital of the Shema and the Amidah, when his heart is aglow with the love of God, causing the evil of the animal soul to be dormant.
ואחר כך יכול להיות חוזר ונאור.
Therefore, after prayer, it can reawaken.
Right, so now we've looked at this level of the Beinoni. That's not a regular everyday working person, but that really is spending all day learning and focusing on godliness. It says even in this case, think of it that the animal soul is just asleep, and that this is not a question of transforming, it's just a question of the mind is ruling the heart all the time. And we should assume that the animal soul can wake up, it's at its full strength, even in this second level of the Beinoni. It's really cool that we're learning to transition about all the stuff about nullifying the two souls, because we're actually now, today is Rosh Chodesh, second Adar, right? We're starting the energy of Adar 2. And the beautiful thing is, when we have 2 different months of Adar, a very special thing happens, right? Purim, the idea of Purim is that it's just complete joy, joy beyond any bounds, total joy, right? But even in a normal Purim, even if you have total joy, you can always get a little bit of something else sneaking in. But on years when we have Adar 1 and Adar 2, we have an extra month of Adar. How many days of Adar are there actually now? Counting all the Rosh Chodesh and everything, there's 60 days total. So now we hit the limit where even if there's a little bit of sadness that tries to creep in, it's nullified 1 in 60, just like my drop of milk that fell into my big vat of chicken soup by mistake. Right? So when you have 2 Adars, we should know we have extra power that our joy, which knows no bounds, even if something happens in life that tries to splash a little sadness in there, the 60 days of total of Adar have the power to nullify anything. And it's not just that, well, it's a little joy, I'm going to ignore it. It's nullified. It's not there. It's irrelevant. It has no existence. So we should know the strength we have in this month. I hope you'll all come to our adult Purim spiel and hear the Megillah read and do all the amazing things we do this month.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen.
Right.
When is it, the 20th?
The spiel?
Yeah, 21st.
Danelle, you know the date of the adult Purim spiel? It's on a Wednesday night. It's 2 weeks from last night.
23rd?
Okay.
So,
20,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
23rd. So 23rd?
14th of Adar. That's what it is.
He's on a different calendar. Don't you have a calendar on your phone, young man?
If it's Wednesday, it's the 23rd. I know
Good,
it's
yeah.
not-
That sounds right.
I know it's not the 30th, so.